Wednesday, June 24th. This is the Everyday Throwing Show brought to you by Jager Sports and Revolution Throwing. I am your host, Chris Solano, joined as always by the president of Jager Sports, California, Jim Vatcher. How are you, Jim?
Doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Anytime you are now part of the official, the thank you doesn't really need to be there anymore. You're paying the bills, so you're kind of, we're thanking you. Joining you as well as always are the co-founders of Revolution Throwing, Alex Trezza, also associate head coach at Boston College University, and Virgil Vasquez, pitching coach in the Minnesota Twins minor league system, as well as former MLB pitcher. No big deal, humble brag, guy pitching the bigs. How we doing, boys? Great to see everybody. I hope all is well. I trust all is well. Tonight, we have what I describe as a feel-good story. We are experiencing a lot of, at least up until today, a lot of negativity in a lot of ways around the game of baseball based on the Players Association, the owners trying to argue it out, decide when we're going to play baseball, how we're going to start up, the money that they're fighting over, all those things. But we're going to go a different route today, as we try to do, and break away from the actual throwing concept, and we're going to go into a personal story of the gentleman who was on your screen that is nice enough to join us, Joe Suozzi. He is a former Boston College outfielder and now one of the newest members of the New York Mets organization, fellow Long Island guy like myself, so he's cool. Thanks for joining us, Joe. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So what I'd like to do, obviously, is kind of get right into this thing. So Coach Trezza, as you know him, former member of my wedding party, which I always like to obviously bring up. He was on my staff for a time before, obviously, moving on to bigger and better like he's done. We usually always have the greatest eye for talent. Him and I usually agree on a lot of things that way. Your story, there's a little bit of that involved. A little bit of everything. It's great from, A all the way to Z, how the whole thing evolved and what you were able to accomplish and what you went through. We're going to start with essentially your high school career. From what I understand and being in the know on Long Island, Chaminade High School, which is a traditional powerhouse, kind of an injury-laden high school career for you?
Yeah. It was a long journey through high school. I really had a lot of ups and downs through it. I'll just start from freshman year right away. My
Sure.
whole life, my dad went to Chaminade. I really wanted to go to Chaminade. I didn't even have a choice if I wanted to go to Chaminade or not. But I always wanted to play for Chaminade baseball. My dad used to bring me to games once in a while. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Made the team freshman year, had probably the best season of my life. I had 575 that freshman year, won MVP. And at that point in my life, I was the same size as everyone else. I think sophomore year, everyone kind of jumped up and started to develop more. I didn't even think about this at the time, but now that I look back at it, that's probably was the case. I ended up batting 250 as a sophomore. And, my sophomore going to junior year, that summer, I was batting 8th, 9th on the team, riding the bench sometimes, travel team. Then my junior year, my fall, my elbow was bothering me, and it was an inner squad, just with the travel team. And my elbow was killing me, and my coach goes, how's your arm? I go, it's fine. It hurts a little bit here. He goes, we used to always play with this back in the day. And I really liked the guy so much. I was like, yeah, let's go out there. First throw of the game, I hear a pop, and I knew my arm was absolutely destroyed. I walked right off the field. I thought it was all over right there because I thought I tore my UCL. And baseball at this point, I loved it so much, but I wasn't playing that well. So it looked like that could have been the end. But thankfully, since I was developed so late, my ligament, my UCL was so strong, because when you're younger, your UCL is stronger, you're underdeveloped. So instead of my UCL tearing, my bone actually popped off. And the doctor's that usually happens in 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds. You're 16 or 17. This is kind of weird. So I recover from that, get surgery, put a screw in. About 4 months later are the tryouts. 5 months later, I'm perfectly good to go. Trying out for the varsity for the first time. I know all the guys. I know the coaches. I think I have a pretty good chance. I have a really bad round off a pitching machine. We throw outside on the turf. First cuts come around. go to the locker room. I get cut first round. You know, I never even hit on the field. It was like, I remember going to the bathroom. I was so angry / sad. And all my friends still made first cuts. Like, the fact that I didn't make first cuts was really like, oh my goodness, you know? But a lot of people then have my back and like, keep on going, keep playing. And that summer, I started to really take off a little bit. I think I developed a lot during that time. I started working out a little bit. I was still a shrimp, really small guy, but a little bit bigger. And I played pretty well that junior season, going to senior year, but it was just really too late for college recruiting. You know, one time I remember, you know, I was looking at D3s. I was like emailing D3 schools, like, I'm going to head first showcase, come check me out, whatever, like everyone does. And I remember Williams College. Someone told me like Williams is a great college. You should try and go there. I email the guy. He's at the game. I realize not to see me, but I see he's there. And I get 2 nice hits in front of him. I go up to him late the next day. I'm like, hey, I'm Joe Suozzi. You're watching me yesterday. You know, I got 2 hits, like thinking he's going to be like, yeah, come to my school, come to my camp, whatever. He's like, yeah, that was a pretty boring game, actually, and just walked away. I was like, oh, my God. I was like, oh, my God, right? This is just not going to happen. I think I had one school reach out to me, McGill in Canada. And I'm like, I'm not going to Canada. You know, I'm from New York. I'm not going to Canada. Nothing against Canada, but I'm not going to leave the U.S. for college. And then senior year, I kept on getting bigger. I batted 4th, got most improved player. And that summer, I got into Boston College. Sorry, that fall I got into Boston College. And you know, there were talks about me trying out, but we weren't really sure if I was going to, if I get the opportunity to. And that summer I played for Neil Heaton, actually, the ex-Yankee. And he was like, dude, how are you going to like stop playing baseball right now? You're going to regret it for the rest of your life. You know, my dad was saying the same thing. He's like, Joe, you got to try out. Because if you don't, like Neil said, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Worst thing that could happen is they say no. So that's kind of the high school story behind the whole thing.
And for those that don't realize, Chaminade High School on Long Island is a very, very strong high school program. Numerous Division I college players have come from there, pro guys. If you know college baseball or you know high school baseball on Long Island, you know Chaminade is one of the premier high school programs. So having that kind of rocky journey there is not that far-fetched in an environment that competitive. It wasn't your run-of-the-mill high school baseball at all at Chaminade, which I know very well. I know Coach Trez obviously knows as well too. So you decide to make the jump to Boston College, and going into that first fall there, I'm assuming before you got to campus, you had made it up in your mind that you were ready to go and going to go. And what was the communication like with the coaching staff? Was it, hey, I'm going to be attending. Can I come try out? What was that correspondence like? As I see Coach Trez laughing as we
it was basically that we knew someone in admissions, and they reached out to Coach Gambino, and Coach Gambino's like, yeah, whatever, we'll give this guy 2 weeks to try out. What's still like, I can't believe that he even did that for me. You know, the fact they let me, never seen me play before, let me come try out. So, you know, I remember the first meeting I went to see Coach Gambino in his office, first time I met him, probably a week before tryouts. And Coach Gambino was so nice to me. He's like, yeah, you could come try out, but, you know, 2 weeks and, you know, the chances that you make this team are so slim, but we'll give you the opportunity. I was so grateful for that. And I was, you know, a little side note with that. I'd go down, the Shea Field used to be over, the garages were overlooking Shea Field where we used to play. And during captain's practice, I wasn't involved yet. I'd go sneak down there and hide in the garage and look what was going on, see how everyone was doing. You know, and I was like, you know, maybe I could do this. I was still intimidated as anything, you know, I was so scared. And, you know, one time I asked Coach Gambino if I could hit in the cages. So I was watching from the garage, and I saw it. It seemed like no one was in the cages at the time because I didn't want anyone in there. And I go into the cages, like 5 guys are hitting. But Trez, the best guy in the world's hitting, Johnny Adams. So Johnny Adams is like the greatest guy ever. And most people, I think, if someone came in and they were like, I'm walking onto the team, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Johnny's like, that's so great that you're trying out right now. Like, we're so excited to have you. And that was like a really like made me feel really good about the whole thing going into it.
And you're right. I mean, those things aren't common. So now you get there in the fall and you're essentially sneaking into parking garages and watching the team work out and trying to just probably get a glimpse at what you're up against, which would make sense, right? And trying to not be visible. Going a step further now, Trez, where do you come in on this? What's been the interaction with you so far? Like, if any, do you have any idea who he is? Have you had the conversation? I know Coach Gambino obviously did. Where are you right now in this process?
Well, it was, I believe, Joe, it was my first year too, right? Like that was,
Yeah.
I always joke about it was my freshman year coaching. So
Yeah.
at BC, but
We're the same class.
yeah, same class, right? But I remember we had talked about him, but like it was at like a lot of, Power 5 schools. It's like, yeah, we got a couple kids trying out. Like we'll give them 2 weeks, see what happens, give them some at bats. But, we didn't think anyone was going to make the team. The roster's pretty much set. But we had an opening number wise. So we're like, let's let the kid kind of go do his thing. And we had talked to the summer program, that with the Titans. So they vouched for him. They said, listen, the kid can play. He's athletic. Like, we don't know if he can play there. You know what I mean? We're just not sure. So the conversation was had, but it was just like, yeah, like give him some gear, let him try out, see what happens. That's basically the extent of it at that point.
So now for Virgil and Jim, I'm sure that in your experiences in baseball, and even to some extent, we've talked about in the past, especially with you, Jimmy, you've seen people like this. You've seen this happen. You've seen players that kind of completely overachieve, force their way in. I'm going to get to you guys as we kind of circle around, but you're now on campus. And the one thing I want to preface this whole thing with is having this experience myself as a college head coach. It is very difficult to kind of have a pure walk-on come in and make your club, no matter what level you're at. And more times than not, it's not even about talent, so to speak. Everything is so usually set to the very last detail in terms of rosters, in terms of the dynamics of the team. So it's very hard to kind of shift from that and making an impression to actually make a team at any level, let alone the ACC conference, is a daunting task. So you go into your first tryout and describe that experience for you.
Yeah, so first day of tryouts, I get changed, not in the locker room. I get changed in the garage I was doing the spying from early on.
I mean, you're basically living in the parking garage at this point.
Yeah, I know my way around that parking garage. Let's just say that much. So I show up. I think everyone's going to be looking at me like, who is this kid? But I walk down there, completely different outfit than everyone else. I have like a red Nike T-shirt on. We're Under Armour school, like white pants. Everyone has like these great Under Armour uniforms on. So I thought everyone was going to be looking at me, but like no one gave a crap that I was even there because everyone was like so happy to see each other and get ready for practice. Like the first practice coming off as a super regional, that like I was just like in the back, like everyone was like, I didn't know what to do either. I was saying so much of my life because I had no clue what to say to anyone. I was so nervous. I was like, what do I say? What do I say? Like, so I was just like, hey, how are you? Where are you from? I probably asked that, to each guy 5 times. So,
Did they figure it out quick when they heard the Long Island accent, or would it take some time?
Yeah, they probably knew right away. I don't think I have that bad of one, but
No, you don't. No, you don't.
And that's why I met Trez the first day.
Yeah.
Trez is the other Long Island guy, introduced himself, and he's all relaxed. And Trez, he's so cool and everything. I'm like nervous Nelly in the corner.
I don't know about cool, but
so they give you essentially what amounts to what? A couple of weeks in the fall season?
Yeah, so it was supposed to be 2 weeks, and 2 weeks comes along. I'm playing all right. I'm not playing great or anything, but I'm like really hurting too pretty bad because I'm really going hard in these tryouts. And, I remember my toenails falling off. I have a huge raspberry because I'm using like boxers instead of sliding shorts because I should have just asked if I could add laundry, but I didn't. So I'm like I'm wearing dirty pants every day, and I'm bleeding through my pants. I remember Coach Sol's like, what are you doing? Like, just ask for laundry, but it's supposed to be 2 weeks, and 2 weeks comes along and Coach Gambino doesn't say anything. So I'm like, I might as well just keep on doing this, So like 4 weeks comes along, and I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, I don't know what to do. It's been 2 weeks past the initial 2 weeks. You know, should I say something? He's like, yeah, maybe you should say, like, Coach, like we said, we talked. And I talked to Coach Gambino, and he's like, yeah, Joe, you're doing great right now. But like I said, the chances are so slim because we already have 35 guys on the roster. But like, keep on going. Let's see how it goes once we get to live at bats. So I was just kept on grinding it out. I was loving it, but it was definitely hard too. It was very nerve wracking.
So now, okay, so you get to the live at bat portion. And was that something as a hitter? You know, you played in a very competitive summer organization with Neil Heaton, who I know very well, and probably faced a lot of good pitching, especially in the Catholic League, also on Long Island you played in. But now it's a different level, I would assume. And what was that like at the outset, facing that type of velocity, those type of arms right away, and having the pressure of trying to impress to make a baseball team?
Yeah, so I actually remember my first at bat was against Metzdorf, and grooved me a fastball down the middle, fouled it off, and I'm like, oh, I could do this for sure, right? Like, I got this. I go 0 for my next 15, I'm pretty sure. And that's pretty hard to do in inter squad, 0 for 15, you know. I'm like, geez, this is tough. But I hit the ball well a couple times, didn't catch a couple breaks, but so 0 for 15. Then the Fall World Series comes around, though. And that's when I had my big breakout. And I think that's when, Trez, you could attest this more. I think the coaches saw, like, this kid's a player, you know? So,
Yeah.
So bringing that in, Alex, you now see 4 weeks of this young man. And was there any opinion at all? Was it neutral? Was it wait till we get to this point? Let's see what he can do, quote unquote, in game? Or where were you guys at?
Yeah, I mean, he was doing his thing. He wasn't getting in the way of practice. I mean, I thought he was pushing some of the other guys, to be honest with you. And, you know, we like hard-nosed players. And the Boston College kind of kid is grimy and dirty and goes out and does his thing and puts his head down and just works hard. So we love that aspect of it. And when we got to live at bats, like you said, in the College World Series thing, like, he started to go a little bit. And there was a kind of, I don't know, that we had different opinions. Like, I was like, dude, let the kid go. Like, this kid he's raking right now. He's doing his thing. He's running around. And the other guys were like, yeah, but he's not going to make the team. Like, so we, you know, it was like normal back and forth in the office. And it was like, just let him ride it out right now, you know? So, but you know, one thing I'll say is one of my buddies was there that played in the big leagues. He was hanging out for a little bit, and we both were watching BP one day. He was at practice, and I remember I was like, yo, look at this kid. This kid is one of our really good players right now. And he's like, yeah, that kid's good. Like, you know, and he was asking about scholarships. And I'm like, no, this kid just walked on. He's like, really? He's like, man, that kid could really swing the bat. And that, like, stuck in my head. And, like, I just started paying more attention, to be honest with you. And every time I looked up, kid had a knock, or, like, he made a play in the field or took an extra base somewhere. It was just like, he just kept, like, being annoying and like actually standing out, like, amongst all these ACC players that had big scholarships and what have you. So to that point, like, you know, he got an opportunity, he made the most of it at that juncture. And, like, he kind of didn't take no for an answer, as you'll hear more in the story, like, as it goes. It's just like, but, like, he was one of the best guys in the fall that year, like, honestly. And, like, kind of, it was quiet, but, like, if you're paying attention, like, he definitely was doing his thing. So,
Joe, we fast forward now from these live at bats into this Fall World Series that Boston College has. All right, and then Doomsday obviously comes, right? The conversation. Just describe that. You know, it's easy to talk about now, knowing that where you are. Right?
Yeah.
So talk about what was probably a very tough day for you. Describe that scenario.
So before I say that, in the Fall World Series, I'll pat my back a little bit. I hit a homer in the Fall World Series. Our team won. Hit a double. I think I tied for the most RBIs on the team. I actually know I was, because I was so, like, pumped up about that. So then I finish, and I had to run to class right after the last practice, because after the last Fall World Series game, because my class schedule was all messed up because I wasn't planning on being on the team. So I run out of there, check my phone in class, and Coach Gambino texts me right away. He goes, come to my office tomorrow for a meeting. I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm going to make the team. Like, I did it. So I get in there. I'm all, like, excited and everything. And Coach Gambino's like, broke it to me right away. He's like, we love you, but the fact of the matter is, we have 35 guys already coming in on scholarship and just recruited, so you can't be on the team this year, and it definitely hurt. I was really proud of myself for where I got to, because I saw, like, I would have made the team, but the spots just weren't there, and I still don't think I was really ready yet, really. I wouldn't have done much that year anyway. I still wasn't developed much, didn't know much about my swing at all. So everything happens for a reason. But I was upset at the time. But, Coach Gambino said, you could keep on practicing with us until March 1st, though. And that's when the NCAA says you got to stop. So that was awesome again. That was like another time Coach Gambino was just really looking out for me over the whole thing.
So that's an interesting comment. You mentioned that you didn't really know your swing yet. And Jim, I'm going to turn to you for this. In your long career, if ever, when did you feel like, you were a guy that plays through high school, through college, almost 20 years in professional baseball, all the way up to the big leagues, Jim? When did you feel like you were in touch with your swing? And how long did something like that take for a guy as successful as you?
Yeah, probably when you saw me in Italy. About 15 years in. Seriously, it's like at that point, I felt like I was pretty good. Like you spend your whole career thinking you doubt yourself. You really do as a player. You doubt yourself, and you kind of have to. You never get complacent. You never want to get complacent. You want to keep learning, keep trying, keep thinking, but a lot of my years of playing, it was just, man, am I any good? I don't know. I'm doing all right, but I still don't feel like I have this figured out. Now, when I got to Italy, when I showed up, I knew I was going to be good. That's a very powerful feeling, but that usually comes with a lot of years. That's what you see in veteran ball players a lot of times. And I finally had my routine down, my process down at that point, and I knew how to prepare. And that's the biggest thing for a player, is knowing how to prepare, finding a routine that works for you, and putting it to use. And it takes a lot of years to figure that out. I mean, when I was in high school, I had no idea what to expect when I went out on the field. No clue. It was just pure adrenaline and pure just going for it and hoping for the best. It was similar in college. And it wasn't really until my about second or third year in professional baseball that I started thinking I might be able to pull this off to go to the big leagues. Because I started seeing, because you don't know how you match up. As Joe was saying, you don't know how you match up. I was coming from a division school in Southern California, and I'm playing against all these guys, or with guys from Pepperdine and, all these top schools, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. And I have no idea how I'm going to pan out against these guys. And I started noticing that this one game I was playing with the Spartanburg Phillies, I was with the Phillies as my own teammates. We were facing a guy throwing very hard, and guys are swinging and missing. They could not catch up to his high fastball. And I had just hit a home run over the left field fence on a high fastball. And it was that moment when I was watching my teammates, all these Division I college guys, swinging and missing, swinging and fouling off, could not catch up to it. I was like, that's interesting. I might have something here. I might be able to pull this off. But look, it takes a lot of years, and just keep learning and keeping an open mind, and never think that you have it figured out.
So then, Joe, you transition now to, you kind of have that realization, besides the hard reality of you not making the squad, it's, as you mentioned, okay, maybe I'm not ready yet. Now, the easy thing to do for you would have most likely been, and I know what all this entails personally, going back home for the summer to Long Island and, hanging out on the beach, maybe a lifeguard, maybe you're hanging out every night chasing girls. Long Island is set up for the summer. We know this. But you decide instead, my assumption is you decide instead to take that summer to get better. And you had every designs, I'm assuming, on going back the following fall and giving it another shot. Were there specific things that you felt you needed to work on, or did you get any advice? Or did you know what you needed to work on?
I kind of knew what I needed to work on. With that said, I did become a lifeguard, and I did go to Montauk a couple times. But
as I said, I'm familiar with the Long Island atmosphere, so
yeah. but I think I just needed to get bigger. I was 170 pounds, I believe, the first day I weighed in after fall practice. I could barely bench 150 pounds. So strength was a huge thing. Obviously, getting to know my swing more, but that doesn't come for way longer. But just getting bigger, I think. Getting bigger is a huge thing for me. To compete with the ACC guys, you got to be strong, I feel like.
Sure.
I just was not strong at all.
So now you go through that summer, you come back, what is your sophomore year of school? And is it right back to it? I assume, did you still have to spy on the team from the parking garage? Were you past that? Were you more, did you get to know anybody on the team? Was it a little easier your second time around?
Oh, it was so much easier because I became, everyone on the team is such a nice guy. And then my best friends at the school at this point were baseball guys, and I was living with them. And no more parking garage because we were a different field, and I wouldn't have to go anyway anymore. Everyone kind of accepted me at this point. And this year there was a spot open, so there were talks. Everyone's kind of like, he's going to make the team this year, we think.
Interesting. So now going in, from a roster perspective that there is an absolute shot. Now, Alex, where were you guys? You're at, I assume, in that 33, 34 range with a spot or two open, maybe one spot. Joe's coming back. He wants to obviously give it a shot again. He probably made a good enough impression that first time around. What was the thought going into that second fall with him now?
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Go ahead.
Right. Kind of the same thing, but we knew we had a spot, and I think we had like another arm maybe try out. We had another outfielder that we really knew wasn't going to make the team, but so it was the same situation, but like there was a spot. So like if he did it again, like you might as well keep him on the team basically. And we knew his character and his makeup and his work ethic. So like, and the guys really liked him. So, as long as he played well, like there was probably a pretty good chance that he would make the team that year.
Okay. So now you go through the fall, Joe, and now describe.
Didn't
No.
stop you there. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay.
We had a little obstacle. So go in playing well. I actually remember Absence Field though has a, I think their gap, what is it, 315 in right center, Trez?
Wait, let me just say what that was. So we were building a new stadium at the time. So we were practicing at Babson University, which is 20 minutes away. And we were taking a yellow school bus every day because we wanted to keep the boys humbled. You know what I mean? We could have taken a coach bus, but like we're on this yellow school bus. We're like singing songs, no phones allowed. So like everyone's getting
burning hot.
Hot.
I like
so
that.
Then set the stage. And now Joey's playing well, whatever. So like, go ahead.
Playing well, short porch and right center field. So my confidence is up in BP. I'm like, oh, I got it. I guess I put some strength on. But really the field was just miniature in right center. But so about my third or fourth at bat of inter squad that fall, so probably a week and a half in, 2 weeks in, I hit a double. I'm like, let's go. I'm pumped up. Get on second base, third ball read, go flying into third base head first, dislocate my shoulder. I knew instantly it was dislocated. I hit the ground, yelled some bad words because I was so close to making this team, making my dream come true, and now it's just over because I just dislocated my shoulder. Why would they take, an injured kid? And ask Trez, I was like, put this thing back in right now. Like I don't care how bad it hurts, just put it back in. They did not put it back in.
So that obviously then derails the rest of your fall.
Yeah. So then they put it back in after 2 hours. I was actually in Trez's car. Coach Sullivan drove me. I was snot all over his car. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
but
I had to get that thing cleaned pretty well. But the worst part I think for him was we made him wait didn't we make you wait in dugout till the practice was over, like in agony before we took you, or no?
We left.
You left?
The trainer was like, he wasn't the guy usually with our team, and he knows what he's doing really well, and our trainer does as well. But he was like, maybe it's a broken collarbone. I was like, this is a dislocated shoulder. I've never done it before, but I just knew it right away. It was so bad. And he's like, so we can't put it back in. You got to go to the hospital. So we go to the hospital. Coach Sullivan brings me, and they x-ray it. And then they're just like not putting it back in. Like People are walking by the room. I'm in like agony, like dying on my shoulder. Finally, they have like a little 5'5" nurse come in, try and put it back in. And like, she can't do it. They bring another nurse in, they're all yanking on my arm, finally put it back in. I think that's the end of it. But when you dislocate your shoulder, you tear your labrum. So they had me going for MRI like the next day. I thought it was gonna be fine because I didn't know this. And they're like, you're gonna have to have surgery. So I was like, all right, I'm done. And this is when, my whole life changed, because the next day at practice, a couple other guys on the team were having surgery, and Coach Gambino was like, so-and-so's having surgery on Wednesday. He'll be back in January. He'll be ready to pitch by the season. Marzoni's having surgery on Wednesday. He'll be back in end of December. He'll be fine. And Suozzi is having surgery on Friday, and he's going to be back by the season. And when he comes back, he's going to wear number 30. And he threw me the jersey. And that was like the way he told me I was on the team.
Wow.
And, yeah.
So what turned out to potentially be, in your mind, the worst day ever turned out to be one of your best, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, definitely. I still get choked up thinking about it.
So you go through the surgery, and then what was it like for you that spring? Now I have to assume mentally you have a roster spot, you have a jersey, but was there still that idea of, hey, I still have to like prove I can play here and belong here. So now you're coming off somewhat of an extensive injury. It's the spring, it's the preseason. We all know how fast that goes, and the season's on you quick. What was that like going into that? Or were you not ready in the beginning, or what was your scenario at that point?
No, I was since it was so early in the fall, I was full health around December, ready to go. And my whole thing was I wasn't just trying to make the team, I was trying to play on the team once I made it there. I didn't want to ride the bench for however long I was going to be on the team. And I already had this image in mind, and then Coach Landon, who was the hitting coach at the time, had all the hitters in for their meetings. And he kind of, made me believe it even more, because I was already thinking it. And he's like, dude, you don't just want to make this team. You want to play on this team. And I was like, yeah, like I want to be, a great player in the ACC. Like that's what I want to do. And so then I really got to work. And that bubble season, I didn't really get many at bats because my shoulder was still healing a little bit. But Coach Sullivan, that when everyone else was inter-squatting, I can't tell you how many pitches he probably threw me in the batting cage. It was like crazy how many. And then I was, just really grinding my way out through the whole thing. And the end of the Coach Gambino always loves talking about this. We have the end of the winter meeting before the spring, and he tells you your role on the team that year or what he thinks it's going to be. Obviously, everything changes. And he goes, your role and your goal should be to try and make the travel squad and try and be a pitch runner and, maybe pitch hit once in a while. But you just want to make that travel squad. I said, Coach, all due respect, I'm going to play on this team. I just know it's going to work out for me like that. I'm going to work so hard, and I'm going to make it happen. And he probably heard that many times before. But, once I said that, I was like, I got to do it now, or else, I want to be a man of my word. So that's when I was like, I really put pedal to the metal at that point.
If you look at season by season, your career at BC, you saw your games played, your at-bats increase every year, your numbers in turn increased every year. What do you attribute that to in terms of your development? Obviously, minus the great coaching that you got at Boston College. Was it being more comfortable? Was it just getting extended playing time? What do you think those factors were that let you improve?
No, I know you said not to say this. It's 100% the coaches, particularly Coach Murphy. He, my junior year, and he says that Trez taught him how to hit. So Trez indirectly taught me how to hit.
The pitching guy just can't let the bat, he can't let the bat go away. He like every pitching coach, he thinks he can hit. No, Alex obviously was a very accomplished hitter. Okay, so
yeah,
now you got
he would tell me about it on the plane all the time, how he hitting homers at Stony Brook.
Stupid.
With those juice bats. But so Coach Murphy was not there my sophomore year, and Coach Landon really helped me out too. Really reminded me to be competitive, and Coach Gambino is always telling me to be competitive because that's the kind of player I am. But I really, like I said, I had no clue what my swing was. I was just going up there and kind of just letting it take over, like watching YouTube videos. I didn't really know what I was doing at all. I still don't really know what I'm doing. But Coach Murphy, I really started to hit with him a lot the middle of my junior season because I started riding the bench, and I was like, I got to turn this around, And Coach Murphy helped me understand. Everyone talks about getting in that hitting position. Everyone's like, get in the hitting position, but it's like, how do you get in that hitting position with the two heels down and the hands back? And Coach Murphy really taught me the idea of the hands and the foot going the opposite direction. Actually, a big thing that I learned that was with the Jaeger bands in a different way. I put the Jaeger band around my front foot and I attached in both my hands, and I let it slack when I did my leg kick. And then once my kick was starting to go forward, I'd pull it tight and hold that position. And I would do that hundreds of times a day and a bunch of other drills with Coach Murphy. But that really changed my whole college baseball career, I'd say.
So, Jim, we obviously didn't have that planned at all. I had no idea he used your J-bands as a hitting.
I still use them every day almost.
Have you heard of any other hitters kind of using that in that fashion, or anyone described that to you before, using your product in that way?
No, that's beautiful thing. I'm trying to think. So you had the wrist cuff around the are you a right-handed hitter?
Yep.
Yeah, so around the left ankle?
No. So I attach both the wrist things to my wrist.
Okay.
Right? And then the part that you'd usually attach to the fence is around my ankle. You kind of see, not my ankle, my bottom of my foot. That's more clear. Bottom of my foot.
Interesting. Wow.
Trez, you see me doing it. Is that how you would explain it? Like that kind of?
Yeah, you're just so he could feel the stretch and kind of his leg going forward and his hands getting back, and feel that stretch before he starts to launch the bat. So Murph is really good at figuring out ways for guys to feel things, and that I remember watching Joey do that a lot.
So now you've taken a product like the J-bands, which is essentially used for throwing, and you kind of engineered it to help you, which is a great story in itself. And you've made a connection essentially with one of your coaches that you describe as probably career changing. You go through your junior season, it looked like you played a fair amount of games, but then we get to this year, and before the season was canceled, you were hitting somewhere in the 414 range, had 3 or 4 bombs, four stolen bases.
One bomb.
Oh, one
Three
bomb.
triples,
Sorry.
though. 3 triples.
That's
and
what
a
it was.
couple
I'm
doubles.
sorry. So that being
close
said,
to more bombs. It should have been 3 or 4 bombs. I got snubbed a couple times, I think.
totally, that's the textbook hitting thing.
Everyone says that, but I did. I promise you, I did.
So then you're at a point.
That wind.
It's always the wind. You're at the point now where in a good sample size, the season was canceled, but you had some games under your belt. You're hitting over 400, playing every day. When did it start to dawn on you that, or did it ever until it happened, that maybe extending your career past college was a possibility? Did that dawn on you before that process or at all? Besides the dream of it, when was it a reality, or was it when you got the phone call?
It was a reality a little bit before that, I'd say. I always had it in my head. It wasn't, I guess, a reality like you said, but even when I was trying out, I was like, if I make this team, I want to get drafted. And Coach Gambino was always telling me, you're going to be a pro baseball player one day, when I was like a sophomore and junior. So that I always thought I was closer than I was too. I had this false sense of reality a little bit, I think. And my end of junior year, though, I finished off pretty hot. And I was like, if I play like this again, it's definitely a reality. I played well in the fall, and I think scouts started to take notice a little bit. And then once the season started and it got off that start, I was like, this is definitely a possibility, I believe.
So you get through that, unfortunately, and Alex, you can kind of talk on this as well. You get to that season where, okay, this could be the year that I do put it together. I do get a chance to get drafted. Then all of a sudden, everything shuts down. We then find out down the road that it's going to be 5 rounds and all those things. And Alex, you probably had I'm just making up a number, or you probably had multiple guys that were draft worthy this year. And with the draft, the way it went down and everything behind it, you had to know that most of those guys weren't going to get that opportunity. And then the Wild West that we've talked about in the past of the free agent signings, everything was clearly uncertain. What was that like for you guys as a coaching staff, knowing you had guys that were definitely deserving, capable, all those things, Joe obviously being one of them? Where did that put you guys and mentally and your thoughts on that whole point of the season and that whole thing with the draft? What did you guys – it's obvious what you thought, but what were you guys kind of feeling?
It was, when we know he was going to get shut down, we were really upset for some of the guys like Joe. And we have a small junior – well, we had a small junior class this past year. So the senior class was like those guys that really, really starting to play. So we had a handful of those guys that were, they're ready. And if they played the whole year, those guys, I think we would have had multiple guys in the top, 20 rounds, really. And a guy like Joe's stock was just going up. He played great in the ACC tournament the year before. He had a great fall. He came out like, a bat out of hell, so to speak, and during the year. I mean, the guy was all over the place, and everyone kept talking about him. So it's unfortunate in the sense that, like, if the season would have kept going, I think he would have kept playing the way he did, and maybe double-digit homers. He can run, a lot of steals, and he just he probably would have hit close to 400, honestly, the way he hits. And so who knows where he would have wound up in a regular draft. But, it stunk because it was really starting to go for a lot of guys that were going to have to prove themselves over the course of the year, and they just didn't get that opportunity. So, I'll let you guys talk about the other part that then ultimately happened for Joe. But so some of our other guys they're going to come back because they didn't have that opportunity to keep going and keep getting in front of scouts.
So, Joe, now you unfortunately you get the news the season is over. There's that big gap between the season ending and what ultimately became, the situation you're in now. The draft comes and goes, and then describe your life past that draft day. I know it was probably a couple days post-draft, and then your cell phone probably rings, and what happens?
Yeah, so I had contact with John Koziak, who's the scout for the Mets, about a week earlier. And he called me. He was like, hey, Joe, are you interested at all? And just asked me a couple questions. And I'm like so fired up. I'm a huge Met fan, love the Mets, like a crazy Met fan. And so like you said, there's a 48-hour dead period after the draft. So the draft ended on Thursday night. So Friday and Saturday, you weren't allowed to talk to the players at all. So starting Sunday morning at 9:00 is when they could begin to call us. And I set my alarm for 8:30. I've been sleeping in a lot. And I'm in bed. I'm like, there's no way I get a call until at least 12, if I even get one, 9:08, I'm in bed. I get the phone call. I'm moving all over the place. And he's like, hey, Joe, this isn't the offer. I'm like, oh, but we just want to make sure, do you want to become a Met? And I'm 100% I want to be a Met. There's nothing I want more. And I've talked to Coach Gambino a lot if he thought this was the best thing for me, and he agreed. So I was like, I definitely want to do this. So he's like, okay, maybe I'll call you back later in the day. I'll let you know either way what happens. So at this point, I'm just kind of, now I'm really on my toes because my dream team is, maybe get to offer me a contract or maybe not. So then later on in the day, what were you gonna say?
Oh, go ahead.
Later on in the day, I was on the highway in Suffolk County, actually, and I got the phone call. I'm like, oh, this is definitely it. I'm pulling over. I pull off the highway into a residential area, and he offered me to become part of the Mets, and I was super emotional, really excited. But I'm crying in front of a residential area. A random person is probably looking outside their house, what's wrong with this kid, But yeah, it was really great. But I was all alone, so I wanted to tell my parents and family in person. So I called Coach Gambino right away and thanked them for everything they did for me.
So you essentially went from a guy that was watching your college baseball team practice from a parking garage as a potential walk-on trying to make the team to a guy that's in his car a couple of years later getting an offer from the New York Mets. And we obviously spoke about everything in between. It's an incredible story, and it's a testament, obviously, to your desire. And Virgil and Jim, I wanted to talk to you guys quickly and bring up. Do you feel, and Virgil, you working in a minor league organization with the Minnesota Twins, when there's a guy that's his background is such that he wasn't always a highly touted prospect. He wasn't always, a high pick. Do those guys have a little bit of a different edge that you've worked with in the past? Do they have a little bit of a different drive? And not saying that's better or anything negative towards the guys that are high profile guys, but is there a little bit of that little edge to them that is always trying to prove it? Do you experience that at all?
Yeah, I would say there's an edge to because you can see the competitiveness, especially here in Joe speak. But another thing that's really valuable is the experience of failure. Because a lot of times when you're the best always and then you experience failure, you really, to come out of it, everybody needs to experience it. So when they come out of it, they learn about themselves, they learn how to really compete, and they learn the thing they need to learn. Like Jim says, it's like it took him 15 years, to learn his swing. It takes a long time to learn yourself and to experience failure and the trials that Joe experienced, because in the minor leagues, you're like, okay, this year I'm going to go to A-ball, and this year I'm going to go double A, and then this year I'm triple A, but they send you to low A, and then they call you up, and then they send you back down. And if you don't let that affect you, if you just play your game, because, you've done some things, you've tried out for teams, and you've, you can focus on the game, you can focus on your play. And, in those times too, it gives you time to learn yourself. So, those type of players, I really enjoy working with because, of those attributes they bring, and like they already know how to push through things of the challenges that come to them, rather than a challenge shows up and they kind of fall away. They're like, that's too hard. I'm going to go over here to what I'm used to doing.
And Jim, you experienced in your own career, you've said this on the show, as a college player, when it came time, you thought your career was over. There wasn't much interest. There was one scout, from what we remember, who basically worked you out. And being a quote unquote undersized player, it's kind of that thing. Did that chip on your shoulder, if it did exist? Do you think that helped you get through a lot of those barriers? Obviously, the physical talent was there. You talked about how you're turning around 100+ mile an hour fastballs when your teammates couldn't do it. I've seen you do it. Do you think, though, that I think the separator a lot of times in professional baseball is that grinded out mentality, that mental toughness that does separate the guys who do make it and who don't, because everyone to a certain extent has talent. Do you think that helped you, being not the high profile prospect, Division II baseball player, had one guy, like you said, have interest in you? Do you think that all added up for your story to help you have a 20-year career and play in the big leagues and do the things that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go into professional baseball with a lot of adrenaline. And like Virgil said, some of these, I saw guys that were number one picks that came in that hadn't had any failure. And they got a lot of money to sign. And they came into camp with their chest a little puffier than most and some money in the wallet. Look, I didn't have any money in my wallet, and most guys didn't. You're making no money in the minor leagues. And there was more of an edge. There was more of an edge. Some of these guys, high-profile guys that had expectations. Billy Beane, the GM of the A's, has mentioned this many times. He was supposed to be the next Mickey Mantle. So there's all these expectations. And when you start failing and you have expectations on you, it's hard to get that going again sometimes, especially if you don't have the mental tools to kind of get back on track. So for me, it was zero expectations, full on adrenaline rush at all times. And you just see where it takes you. So yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'll tell you a quick story because Joe had a great story there. He's a big Mets fan. So I'll tell you a quick story how crazy baseball is. So I played in the Mets organization in AAA for the Norfolk Mets, or how they like to say it there, Norfolk Mets. And so I was at Norfolk. And I think we're in Ottawa, Canada. This is AAA. I was playing with a guy, Rico Bronya, who's the first baseman.
Yeah.
And the last memory I have of Rico was him in the hallway of, going to the clubhouse, smashing his bats into a million pieces. Now, Rico was a very calm guy, very, very good dude, great guy. He wasn't the type of guy that to smash his bats into splinters. So he was just smashing his bats. He was struggling big time. And in his mind at that point, I could hear him talking. He was like, I suck. I can't even hit AAA pitching. I'm a mess. I'm hitting 230 in the minor leagues in AAA. And that night, he gets a call. You're going to the big leagues, my man. There's an injury. I don't remember who got injured, but you're going to the big leagues. And he had that look of pure terror in his eyes. Like, I'm making my major league debut and I can't hit AAA pitching. I'm a mess. The guy goes to the Mets. This is 1994, and he's hitting 400 for the first month or two. And 9 years later, and about $12 million later, he never comes back. We never see him again. He has a 9-year major league career, and he goes from a guy that can't hit AAA pitching to you got a fresh start. The lights are better up there. But look, big league pitching is tough. It's weird. Baseball is weird. You have to grind it out at all times. You never know when your opportunity is going to come. And you could be at your lowest moment and you still can't give up. Because if he gave up right there, he's toast. If he's toast. But he went up there and looked at it as a fresh opportunity. And it's one of my favorite stories when I think back at how crazy baseball can be.
And you said it right. You have to grind it out. And Joe, that's what you are obviously the textbook definition of after going to a school that didn't recruit you, getting cut after your first fall, coming back, getting injured, still making it, and then, obviously parlaying that into playing for the New York Mets. We wish you nothing but the best. Again, it's a great, great story. We look forward to obviously following your career. And you'll always have a home on our show. If you want to come back and when you make it to the big leagues one day, don't forget us, obviously. And not to mention the fact, and I think you mentioned this a couple of times, it really is a testament to the coaching staff at Boston College. And I'm not saying that just because they're associate head coaches on our panel, but you mentioned it a couple of times. Your career is probably very different if you don't get the care that they showed you throughout your career there. Your life is probably completely different right now, and that just shows you the impact that good coaching can have. And that was great to hear as a college coach myself. The one thing that sticks out to me the most is in terms of grinding it out. I mean, you did every possible thing you could. You even took a J-band, which is a throwing tool, and just use that to try to become a better hitter. Things like that are going to carry you far. If and when the career is over, even all past baseball, things like that attitude is obviously going to make you very successful in life. And again, we're very thrilled to have you. Any idea, obviously no ideas of what's going to happen this season. So I assume it's just staying in shape right now. Still you're probably still on that high of being a New York Met. Again, if we can hopefully touch base again down the road and have you back on the show. And hopefully as we go, we find you in Citi Field and, you don't forget us. I'll see you in the clubhouse. You'll get us those good diamond seats.
For sure.
But it was a pleasure having you. I thank you for your time. I'm sure you've got things you want to do for the rest of tonight, as we all do. But this was an important story as well as a very uplifting one. For those of you that do want to find my co-hosts online, everywhere else, purchase product, Jim Vatcher can be found at jagersports.com. Do not call his cell phone. It is basically a flip razor phone. And I don't know if he runs out of minutes. I don't know if he can text. So let's just stick to the website, stick to Twitter at jagersports.com. Alex and Virgil at Revolution Throwing. Tell us where we can find you, how we can find you, find the products if we're looking for them.
RevolutionThrowing.com, at Revolution Throwing at Instagram, and Rev Throwing on Twitter, Facebook. You can call us anytime, here to help you guys learn your throw.
And Trezor, you obviously have been pumped up this whole episode. Obviously, how great the coaching staff is at Boston College, Coach Gambino, Coach Murph, and I get it. I've been around those guys. So this is really a fluff piece for you. Where can we find you as well online?
Well, you can follow BC Birdball. You can follow Birdball on Instagram. Obviously, our regular website at Boston College Baseball. One thing I just want to say about Joey really quick is we keep talking about all the things like, he kept grinding it out and stuff like that. the kid's a tremendous athlete. And when he got the opportunity, like he didn't waste it. What I'll also tell you is this: he's a fun-loving guy. He's funny. We talk about, his favorite show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, a lot. And and the only reason I mentioned that stuff is because in the game, I mean, he's a fiery guy, but like you wouldn't know if he was 0 for 4 or 4 for 4 with 2 bombs. And he just was always having a good time on the field. And, we talk about the mental game, but like he just was always present. And he was never over the top, so to speak, either way. He just kind of even keeled, and he just wanted to play, man. And even at a level like this and moving on in his career, and obviously Jim and Verge can talk about it, and you too, Chris, like that's the biggest thing when you keep moving on, right? Just can you be even keeled, and can you do it on a daily basis and give yourself a chance to be successful. So those are the things that were really so important, besides the baseball stuff.
I can see all that adding up and see how you're going to have a lot of success, Joe. We obviously wish you nothing but that. You can find me here at the Everyday Throwing Show, as well as the Take It Deep podcast, which is the other umbrella show for this wonderful show. Anywhere else you can find me, you probably don't want to look. Let's stay safe. Let's obviously keep on grinding this thing out. Let's get past all this. Let's get back on the field and get baseball up and running, which it looks like it might. But we'll be back sooner rather than later. Take care, everyone. This is the Everyday Throwing Show. Come on back.